A clear understanding of physiology is the basis to understand the hormonal therapy of breast cancer. The SERMs are antagonists by blocking the ER receptor in the breast. They act as estrogens in the bone and the uterus, increasing the risk for endometrial carcinoma. Acting as an agonist, they provide negative feedback to reduce LH and FSH levels. The anti-estrogen fulvestrant, on the other hand, binds and completely destroys the ER receptor. The aromatase inhibitors anastrozole and letrozole block the aromatase enzyme, which is the final step in estrogen synthesis. Premenopausal women have a high quantity of aromatase. That's the reason aromatase inhibitors act better in postmenopausal women. Ovarian ablation, either by surgery, radiation, or using drugs, is another option to reduce estrogen levels. A breast lobule is a gland that makes milk, whereas an alveolus is a tiny cavity. Having noted the embryology of the breast, one should also note that the breast develops during pregnancy, and throughout the reproductive age group, the changes of hormones create a dynamic environment in the breast. During the first half of the menstrual cycle, estrogen causes a ductal and stromal development, also increasing the size and density of the breast. Progesterone secreted during the second half of the menstrual cycle causes differentiation of epithelium and development of the lobule. It also causes engorgement of the alveolus with secretions. During the first and second trimester, the coordinated and integrated action of estrogen and progesterone causes development of the ducts and the lobules, also causing differentiation and development of the epithelium. It's also responsible for the pigmentation of the areola and development of the tubercles of Montgomery. During the third trimester, along with estrogen and progesterone, prolactin is secreted, which helps for the lactogenesis. The milk let down is the neurohormonal reflex. The neurological signals are the cry, look, smell and feel of the baby, whereas the hormonal effect is the suckling of the baby with release of oxytocin. Once the mother stops breastfeeding, the dormant milk increases the pressure inside the lobule, thereby causing pressure atrophy of the epithelium. As the woman approaches menopause, there is a reduced secretion of estrogen and progesterone, causing involution of the ducts and alveoli, and the connective tissue is replaced by fat. Ideally, this is an integrated process, and if not, there is development of ANDI. As we had just seen, in the early reproductive years, under the influence of estrogen and progesterone, there is lobular and stromal development. Thus, if there is a fibroadenoma which is less than 3 cm in size, or adolescent hypertrophy, it is considered to be a disorder. It is a disease when there is a giant fibroadenoma more than 3 cm in size and gigantomastia, both of which require operative therapy. Ductal development causes nipple eversion. It is a disorder to get nipple inversion, which may cause blockage of secretions and periductal mastitis. It's a disease to have a subareolar abscess and a mammary duct fistula. An uncoordinated action of estrogen and progesterone during the ages of 25 to 40 can cause microscopic changes such as cyclical changes of menstruation, or microscopic changes such as epithelial hyperplasia of pregnancy, which may be associated with a bloody nipple discharge. The cyclical mastalgia is associated with the nodularity and cyst formation, which could actually be a disease if there is incapacitating mastalgia. The reduction of estrogen and progesterone from the age of 35 to 55 causes the involution of the breast. A disintegrated involution causes ANDI. The benign breast diseases are either non-proliferative or proliferative. The ones which are proliferative either have typical or atypical cells. 70% of benign breast lesions are non-proliferative. There is no risk for carcinoma breast development. The phosphatase enzyme destroys the vesicles of the cell, which extrude positively charged content. The negatively charged counterpart will then attract a positively charged calcium ion, by which the cell gets calcified, and this defines dystrophic calcification. Microcalcifications occurring along the main duct and its branchings are usually benign and less than 5 mm in size. Under the influence of estrogen, a fibroadenoma is a tumor containing both stroma and parenchyma. If there is too much of parenchyma and less of stroma, that's when it forms a tubular adenoma. During the lactating phase, the tubular adenoma is converted to a lactating adenoma. Instead of nicely building a brick wall, I keep a lump of bricks on one side and clump the cement on the other. This is what defines a hamartoma. multiple clumps of disorganized cells. Adenolipomas occur as sharply circumscribed lesions. These are nodules containing both fat and breast lobules. Under the influence of excess estrogen and reduced progesterone, there could be ductal proliferation and stromal fibrosis, in addition to which there could either be epithelial regression or an intraductal papilloma formation, both of which cause a distorted breast lobule, thus causing multiple cysts which may be calcified. This is what defines sclerosing adenosis as the name suggests. Sclerus is hard and adenosis means gland. This has no malignant potential and can be seen anywhere from the childbearing age group to the perimenopausal age group. It is quite challenging when one has to deal with these cases to differentiate them from malignancy. The management is basically observation, but histopathology and radiological evidence is required to differentiate this from malignancy. The sclerosis which occurs at the area of duct branching, if less than 1 cm of size, looks like a radial scar with a spoke wheel appearance. If it is larger than 1 cm in size, it is called a complex sclerosing lesion. Epithelial hyperplasia of the ducts can occur under the influence of estrogen. 3 to 4 layers being a mild hyperplasia, 5 layers or more being moderate, and a florid hyperplasia in which the duct is entirely occupied by the epithelium. This is called a sordid type. If there are spaces in between, under the microscope it looks like papilla, therefore it's called a papillary type. Ductal hyperplasia is seen in more than 20% specimens, and there is an increased risk of carcinoma. An intraductal papilloma can occur in the perimenopausal age group. It could either be independent or could occur with sclerosing adenosis. It consists of a stalk attached to the wall of a duct, anywhere from 0.5 to 5 cm in size, with either a serous or a bloody nipple discharge. There is no risk of malignancy unless of course there are atypical cells. But if multiple intraductal papillomas occur in the younger age group, they might transform into carcinoma. Atypical proliferative lesions are not carcinoma, although they have some features of carcinoma. If the duct is filled with round, cuboidal or polygonal cells and the size is less than 3 mm, it is called atypical ductal hyperplasia. If it is more than 3 mm in size, it is DCIS. By immunohistochemistry, E-cadherin is seen in DCIS and not seen in LCIS. To differentiate between ADH and DCIS, one needs excision biopsies, and there is an increased risk of carcinoma with ADH. Instead of the ducts, if the terminal ductal lobular unit gets filled with monomorphic cells, that is atypical lobular hyperplasia. It is called a pleomorphic variety if there are calcifications and mammographic changes. The take-home message is that hormonal imbalance, mainly increased estrogen and reduced progesterone, is responsible for ANDI and benign breast disorders, mainly seen from the age group of 15 to 55. Non-proliferative disorders and proliferative disorders without atypia, such as cysts, ductectasia, epithelial hyperplasia, sclerosing adenosis and complex sclerosing lesions, have no increased risk of carcinoma, whereas the atypical proliferative lesions under the influence of estrogen, such as ALH and ADH, increase the risk of carcinoma by 4 or to 7-fold. DCIS and LCIS increase the carcinoma risk by 10-fold.